Welcome to the Techno Fundamental Report for February 27th. You know, Paul Volcker had a really tough job back in the 1980s when he took over from Arthur Burns as head of the Fed. He was involved in something called a wage price spiral. It was where wages kept going up, inflation kept going up, and it says a macroeconomic theory explained the cause and effect relationship between rising prices and rising wages. So, Volcker, this is a book by Volcker. The main takeaway from the book was how important his experience as an economist was. Little cartoon here. Are we ready to launch this investment strategy, or does it need more second guessing? We're constantly second guessing our strategy. There's no strategy that's going to work all the time. So what happens is that when your strategy quits working, most people will try to chase down another strategy, but that's a really big mistake because, let's just take last year. The biggest movers were Bitcoin and gold. So you could say, well, I'm going to switch my strategy to gold and Bitcoin. And then the minute you do that, the strategy that you abandon starts to work and the one you're adopting quits working. It's just something to be aware of. It's just not a good idea. Now, we wanted to mention here that the S&P 500 continues to be in a sideways motion here. However, it recently stuck out to an all-time new high, and everybody started to get very optimistic about it. Well, and also I wanted to mention that the price of gold has been making new highs, so that would be a strategy to switch to. But kind of going here, this is the number of new highs on the S&P. So we see the S&P index actually hitting a new high, but the number of new highs in the index are anemic. I mean, there's hardly any. This is a 50-day moving average of the S&P 500 new highs. And, the latest reading down here would be 19. So even though the S&P is hitting new highs, it's hitting it on very few stocks. The stock market is never obvious. It's designed to fool most of the people most of the time. Very true statement. So every day when I come in, I ask myself, how is the market going to fool me today? Am I going to want to go into Bitcoin? Fear and greed are probably the worst emotions to have in connection with the purchase and sale of stocks. So in other words, that's how the market fools you. It plays on your emotions. And what happens is you start watching things too closely, and that'll get you in trouble. Now, as you can see here on the sentiment readings, the AAII bull minus AAII bear, we've gotten down here in a kind of a negative territory, which is somewhat of a positive because it's telling you that everybody's gotten somewhat pessimistic, which in a way can be a good thing. Extremely crowded trades really work extremely well. So when you see a stock that's real crowded, and I would say the latest example is NVIDIA. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've run into people around Baton Rouge that want to tell me about their ownership of NVIDIA. Well, it's a crowded trade, so I hope it all works out. Now, they're going to report earnings tonight. We'll just have to see. There's no such thing as a one-decision stock. In the 1970s, you had the Nifty 50. And recently, we've had what we call the FANG stocks. This attitude that you can just buy and hold and make a one-decision stock out of it. Well, my grandfather did that with railroad stocks and lost everything. Now, my dad did it with oil stocks, mainly Exxon, and it all worked out. It's just a hit or miss thing. So you really should kind of get out of your head that there's just some one-decision stock out there that you can just buy and hold forever. I think it's the riskiest thing you can do. Now, I'm following a group of stocks, a group of ETFs. This is the ARK Innovation. Their biggest position is Tesla. They also have Palantir. They have the hottest growth stocks in the market right now. And you can see what's happening with this fund. It's really breaking down. It broke down below the 50-day and has broken down consistently for the last 3 days. I'm just saying that the market's having some trouble here. Here's another one. This is the Innovator IBD 50 Fund. This is 50 stocks that are the top stocks in the IBD database, Investors Business Daily. And you can see here, it's breaking down. It broke the 50-day. It actually testing the 200-day. Just not a positive pattern. Here's the FANG stocks. We're talking Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google. And you can see here, these stocks are breaking down. So it's worrisome. It is worrisome. But keep an eye on the FANG stocks, because if they crack, it could have a meaning for the overall market. Now, I want to keep an eye on interest rates as well, and you can see here that the 5-year Treasury is starting to work its way down. We're seeing the power index is somewhat improving, but still for the last 125 trading days, interest rates are still up 11%, which is probably causing a problem. Now, the other problem I'm having here is the aggression index. This is where I'm taking the NASDAQ and I'm dividing it by the consumer staple stocks. Why is this important? It's important because the institutions, especially these guys that run these very large mutual funds, they can't go to cash. They just cannot go to cash when things are difficult. So what do they do instead? They start buying things like Campbell Soup, Coca-Cola, Johnson & Johnson, very defensive names. So when the institutions start shifting their portfolios around out of the NASDAQ and into the consumer staples, it's definitely giving you a warning. So if we go back to the bear market of 2022, you kind of got a similar reading there. So just be aware. Now, the primary trend does continue to be up. We're watching it closely. However, the S&P's fine and the NASDAQ's fine on a long-term basis. Now, on a short-term basis, we're getting way too many new lows on the New York Stock Exchange. We're up to 90 as of yesterday. We don't want to see over 40. So right now, I think the best advice I can give would be to just kind of settle down, sit tight, maintain your watch list. There's no rush right now. Move slowly. So if you have any questions, please let me know.